What's up guys and welcome, Kara Corey here, and this is the first video, the start of my new series that yet to be titled. I'm not sure the title of it yet, but this is going to be a series all about being healthy and focusing more on our internal health while likely getting fitter and stronger in the process, as I'm aiming to just be a better athlete in 2018 while I hang up my heels for a bit. So throughout this series, I want to bring it back to basics, and I want you guys to join me in this journey with just being more in tune with our health. So today's video, we're going to go over where do you begin in terms of starting your macros. If you want to track macros with me, I'm going to take you through that and explain how to very easily do that in this video. And then I'm going to go over all the ins and outs through this series for when we're tracking macros, when we know when to adjust them and why, when to add in refeeds, when to add in free meals. I'm going to go through basics of how to estimate tracking when you go out to eat, grocery store trips, how to read nutrition facts labels. I'm even hoping to bring you guys to the doctor's office with me to get some blood work done, maybe even a DEXA scan, to kind of monitor some of those other factors that help show us what our internal health is kind of looking like. In addition to workouts, cooking, you name it, everything, you guys, is going to be encompassed in this series. So right now, do me a favor, take a look and make sure that you are subscribed to my channel, and you guys know what to do. Hit the notification bell. That way you don't miss any of these upcoming videos, because I want to keep you motivated right along with me during this series. So to start today, I'm going to talk to you guys about how to easily track your macros, and I'm going to be tracking macros throughout this journey. I have been a macro tracker, and not everyone tracks macros, so if you guys are trying to lose weight, this doesn't mean you necessarily have to track macros in order to do that. However, that is one of my preferred methods, but there's other ways to do it. Some people prefer using exchanges, some people just go to more of a meal plan based approach, but I do really prefer macros, and it's something that I use with most of my clients, and I really believe that it works well. You do need some component of accountability when it comes to knowing how much you're consuming, how much you're taking in, and being an intuitive eater is not as easy as it sounds, and you absolutely can do intuitive eating with weight loss, but for me, I know I need the accountability of tracking my macros, not because I'm so focused on the numbers, but remember, this for me is not just trying to lose weight. It's not my goal. I'm more so trying to be healthy, and with that, if I'm tracking macros, I find I approach my day in a healthier manner. I look at my macros like a bank account, and I'm like, all right, this is how much money I'm working with today. How can we make this best? How can I use my calories? How can I get the best bang for my buck? Just as you would with money, if you had $100 to spend for the day, you want to make that money, you want to spend it good and get as much as possible. It's the same with your calories and your macronutrients. So for me, that's the best approach, and I'm going to kind of talk to you guys about how to go about doing that. The starting point, it's pretty simple. Research hasn't changed the fact that calories in and calories out. It does take a little bit more than that. However, we know that ultimately, to lose weight, you need to be expending more calories than what you're consuming. So there's other factors that go into the equation, such as your activity level, your age, your height, your weight. All those things are kind of part of that equation. So it looks a little bit different for everyone, but ultimately we need to start out by finding out what our resting metabolic rate is, or our RMR. And what an RMR is essentially the amount of calories that one needs just to wake up and lay there in bed all day. It's what you need to stay alive. It doesn't take into account your activity levels. Even if you're not an active person, it doesn't take into account just getting up and moving around whatsoever. So your resting metabolic rate is truly what you need to live and function, to keep your organs functioning and all that stuff. Once we figure out our resting metabolic rate, and you get that overall calorie level, you can factor in there an activity level based on what your activity is like, and from there we're going to figure out what your macronutrient distribution looks like and that's going to give you your fat, your protein, and your carbs. The internet has made it very easy, so I'm going to show you a couple simple ways to figure it out online, because I know a bunch of you don't want to be sitting there crunching numbers. But to bring it back to what I learned in college and what the Academy in Nutrition and Dietetics suggests, what I learned in college was using the Harris-Benedict equation. So that's super old school. Some people may still use it if you're a clinician, but Harris-Benedict was something I used, throughout my clinical rotations and throughout college. And, it's still a basic equation you can use to figure out your resting metabolic rate. However, a lot of times it does underestimate your calories. Hi. So Harris-Benedict is not something I would suggest using at this point in time. Looking at the evidence-based library for the Academy of Dietetics, the Mifflin St. Jour is actually a more accurate equation to use. So that equation came out in the 90s, I would say. And I have to say, even now as a dietitian, when practicing in the field, the hospital I worked at, we didn't even have to calculate that anymore. Everything's electronic, where I didn't even have to go through and use a calculator. I just plugged in height, weight, and it generated it for me. So everything is very simplified in the day and age that we live in. So I'm going to show you guys the Mifflin St. Jour equation. I did write it out myself to get an idea of where my calories fell when I used that equation. And then I also want to show you an online calculator tool that I use a lot, and I find it to be fairly accurate in terms of starting macros. Now, before we get there, I just want to say you don't need to hire a coach to figure out your macros. And I'm sitting here as a dietitian, as a health coach. I get inquiries all the time for people that want help with their macros. And it's not a perfect science. So I think a lot of people get stressed out not knowing if they're on the right macros or if they're doing the right macros. There isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to this, so don't feel like you need to hire a coach to do this. You really don't. It's not perfect. Even if you do hire a coach, even if you do hire a dietitian, we're using these simple equations that aren't always perfect. It gives us a starting point. So what we're going to do is just find our starting point and trust the process. I always have to say that to my clients. You have to trust the process. You need to try things longer than a day or two. You can't just panic that something's working or not working. You need to kind of work through it for a little bit. So we're going to get the macros set up and try them for at least 1 week, and then we're going to adjust from there as needed. And I'll talk in a separate video about how to adjust. So I've pulled up for you guys from consultant360.com the equation for Mifflin St. Jour. So I've got a separate equation here for men and women, so just note that depending on what your gender is, there are 2 separate equations. So for women, you can see the equation right there. And this is one easy way to figure out your resting metabolic rate. I do find it to be fairly accurate. I went ahead and used the equation for myself based on my weight and my height. You do have to convert to kilograms, and you have to convert your height to centimeters in order to figure this out. But based on Mifflin St. Jour, I end up having a resting metabolic rate of 1,193 calories. But remember, that is my body's resting metabolic rate. And some of you may be like, oh my God, you're never supposed to go under 1,200 calories, you're gonna die. But I'm a very small individual. I'm a very tiny French Canadian package. I'm only 5'2". I'm little, you guys. So it really depends on the person. And it's always best if you can have, instead of using an equation, if you can get it actually measured. So I actually have had mine measured before. It was called the MedGem, and it was, you breathed into it, and I don't remember all the science behind how it calculated your RMR, but I remember doing that in college, and it was about 1,150 calories. So it was very similar to this equation. I think the bod pod and other methods like that can also calculate your RMR. So if you've had that done or can get that done, that might be the best route for you. Now remember, that is just your body laying there not moving. So we need to add an activity factor into that. And I added in an activity factor of 1.5, which is what was recommended, and that gave me 1,792 calories total for my body, my age, my height, weight, and gender, and that would be my maintenance, about 1,792, and that sounds about right, honestly. For myself, I've competed enough that I've dieted down enough for shows that I have a pretty good idea of where I am maintenance-wise with calories and where I need to be to start losing weight. And for me, I've learned my body well throughout doing these competitions, that I have a good idea of what macronutrient split works best for me as well. And I know some of you may not have competed before and may just not know what macronutrient distribution is best for you. And that's okay. It's, again, hiring a coach isn't necessarily going to know what's best for you either. I don't believe in the blood type BS and all that other, junk, It's trial and error. And so choose a macronutrient split that looks good to you. That's kind of what I'm going to show you what I'm going to do, and just choose what kind of looks like it fits me the best. So I do recommend picking some starting numbers and kind of looking at what your maintenance is. We often hear, subtracting 500 calories to lose a pound a week. Don't even worry about that right now. We're just going to get started with trying to find a maintenance level for calories. So I'm going to show you this other site that I also used, and I find it very easy, and I recommend you guys check that out as well if you need help starting your macros. This is probably the easiest route for you guys to go to calculate your macros. It's called healthyeater.com, and it's got a whole macro calculator for you. So it not only figures out your calories, but it also figures out your macros, and it's really nice the way you can change things up. But I honestly don't know what data they use to get to their numbers, but I went ahead and put in my age for you guys, gender, my current weight, my current height, and then it asks if you're normal or lean mass. I just leave it at normal. You can choose your activity level, which I'm not sedentary, but I usually choose light activity. And then for your goals, it gives you the option to lose 10%, maintain, or gain. So I like to start with maintain just to see where I fall. And based on all that, and let me go down here too, it allows you to adjust your protein level. So I go to a higher protein level because it does help assist with weight loss. And this is kind of accurate compared to my other equation, but this is what it brings up for me for maintenance macros: 189 carbs, 119 grams of protein, and 46 grams of fat. And then it gives you the distribution of macronutrients. So that's 46% of my calories coming from carbs, 29% coming from protein, and 25% coming from fat. So that's an easy way to do it. And if you're very specific and you normally eat 3 meals a day, then this breaks it up for you to kind of give you a distribution on how to set your meals up if you want to do an even distribution, which is kind of a nice feature as well. So that's just one option for a website that you guys can use. This site is the macronutrientcalculator.com. So if you go ahead and use the Mifflin St. Jour equation that I showed you, what's nice about it is you can just add in your calories that you came up with here, and then it gives you the option to choose what macronutrient distribution you want. So you can choose one of these standard approaches, or you also have the option down here to kind of adjust it and play around with it how you see fit, or where you want the macros to fall while still keeping those calories the same. So I put in an estimate for my starting macros of 1,592, and I did 40% carb, 30% protein, and 30% fat split, which gives me goals of 159 carbs per day, 119 grams of protein, and 53 grams of fat. So this is a much simpler way of figuring out your macro split instead of doing it on your own. It gives you the options right there, calculates it for you. So I'd highly recommend using that site to figure out your macros. So you're gonna choose the method that works best for you to get your starting macros going. And what you're gonna do is just get started right away with them. Choose some type of a tracker that works best for you. I personally like MyFitnessPal. I've been using it for a long time, but choose some type of fitness tracker that works well to start, documenting your progress day by day. And don't be super hard on yourself if you're struggling, if it's challenging to get the numbers just right, if, the carbs are higher than what you're used to or the fat's higher, play around with things. And the way I like to do it is I like to meal plan a little bit within my macros to try to figure out ahead of time so that I'm not struggling the day of and going way over or way under. So it does still help to meal plan when you do have macros, but that's optional for you guys. It just can help you out a bit when you're first starting out and not really sure. Just sit there and play around and add in different food and see what kind of adds up the best for you. So we're gonna use these macros and we're gonna go for a week straight. And what I do suggest doing anytime you start a new diet plan or macros or whatever you want is to do daily weights for the first week, because like I said, it's trial and error. So let's just stay on top of seeing how our body responds. And while the scale is not everything, we're just using it for data. So keeping the feelings unattached to it. Don't be upset. Don't be happy with what you see. Just disregard. Just literally document and use it as data, because we kind of want to see how your weight trends over the week. So step on the scale, get the weight, or if you prefer doing photos, you can do that too, and it helps in addition. But those daily weights will give you a good idea of if your weight is all of a sudden trending up, or maybe it's staying stable, or maybe it's coming down, and then we'll assess where to go from there. So I hope this video gave you a couple resources and made it a little bit easier to figure out where to start. Just remember, don't get so bogged down in these exact precise numbers. It's definitely not a perfect science. Just find something, start doing it, put it to action, and stick with it consistently, okay? At least give it a week. Nothing bad is gonna come with 1 week of tracking macros, even if you think they're way too high. Oh my God, these carbs, I'm gonna blow up. No, you're not, I promise. So just get something in place, and that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put something in place, and I'm gonna do it for a solid week. So the macros I'm gonna start with for this week that I put in that just seem right around my maintenance macros, we're gonna see that will be 189 grams of carbs, 119 grams of protein, and 46 grams of fat. So that is just what I'm gonna start out with for the week. I'm gonna do it every day consistently, starting tomorrow, and we'll see how it goes, and I'll see you guys next week. I want you to comment below what route you end up going to calculate your macros. Hold yourself accountable if you want. Right below what your macros are going to be, how you're going to start out, and why you're starting with those macros, and then we'll check back in together next week. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave any questions and comments below for other ideas you would like to see discussed in this series. I know a lot of people that watch my channel are already very involved in fitness and very educated on it, and I want to make sure I'm still helping out people who are new to this and who are just starting out. But I want to hit all you guys, so I'll make sure to go as simplified as needed and as detailed as needed. You just let me know below, and we'll see you in the next one.